These ones are staying pretty close to the clearing. There's probably about another 8 who come in for water dishes and morning feeds and afternoon feeds. As the bright, shiny drought bites ever deeper. Look at the leaves. They're all going pale. And starting to die. We've had 0.5 millimetre of dew in the last 2 weeks. 8 millimetres of precipitation in the previous month, and probably half of the measured precipitation in April was dew. It's pretty bad on my side of the fence. But it's truly scary over on the sheep farm. He's got lots and lots and lots of trees that are losing their leaves. And of course that just adds to the depth of the bushfire fuel burden. When the leaves die and fall down. I think I'm going to start going out with my brush cutter and put a look like that onto that. The theory is that when it's standing up, dry flax lily stuffed with gum leaves is surrounded by air on all sides. It's a fairly volatile mix and it promotes a really intense, fast, sort of high radiant heat type of a fire. Whereas when you lay it down, the air can only get to one side of it, and a pile of flat grass has been lying on the ground for a while. It'll burn a lot slower than when each strand of grass is standing up 3 feet high with air all around it. So that's the tactics, I suppose, or the strategy, if you can call it a strategy. We had some dew last night. I think that looks scarier than this. And I think that looks a whole lot scarier. Than this. But how long can 30 years of being operated as an endangered species sanctuary keep one side of the fence green when the other side is drying out? And while we're on the topic, let this be a point of visual evidence attesting to the fact that grazing sheep and cattle on Australia doesn't actually achieve anything in terms of bushfire fuel hazard reduction, because sheep and cattle don't eat dead gum leaves. Sheep and cattle don't eat dry flax lily. Sheep and cattle don't eat stringy bark sticks and wattle branches. What keeps Australia in livable condition is humans burning it properly, the way it used to be burnt 300 years ago before the sheep showed up. And yeah, this is edge effect. And yeah, the only way I can think of to defend against a fire coming up the hill across this stuff is to sheet mulch the neighbour's flax lily and try and build up the topsoil on his side of the fence, so his side can keep a little bit of moisture, so his trees will last longer, like my trees are lasting longer. Not my trees, the trees for which I am responsible. Because when you buy the title deed, you finish up with responsibility for everything that lives inside the boundaries. Which sounds kind of stupid, but it's true in the sense that unless it's on the slope of more than 30 degrees, unless it's endangered or protected, you can pretty much bulldoze it out of existence if you've got the money to spend on your idea of a money-making business scheme. It is a daunting prospect, attempting to keep the country green in a drought. Shading the topsoil. Trying to keep the tree's roots cool, keep some water in the soil. And I'm not entirely certain that any of these trees will be able to regenerate if they die in this drought. A drought that's coming to us courtesy of a super El Nino. There is no rain on the forecast for the next 7 days. There's probably not much rain on the forecast this side of spring, if we get any spring rains, and if we don't get any spring rains, with no soil moisture profile, and in another 3 or 4 months every one of these trees is going to be dead. and we'll be up to our arse in bushfire fuel, and there's no possibility of safely burning it off. So this is what the country looks like beyond what I call the defended area. And the reason this is as bad as it is because it's a north-facing slope and the soil is thinner. I can't even really blame this on myself because I didn't have this cleared 30 odd years ago. I had a lot of clearing done down there on the airfield, but no, this is just global warming, diminution of rainfall caused by the clearing of the forest on the coastal plain, shutting off the rainfall recirculatory pump. When I was a kid, this was a wet sclerophyll forest. When I bought it, it was a sclerophyll forest. By 2018, it was a dry sclerophyll forest. And in 2018, the canopy started to die. 2019, 2020, some places half the canopy died. Some of the shrubs are even starting to go pale and die off. And with the Trump Netanyahu muddle Eastern oil field wars, with Australia's supply of diesel and petrol and jet fuel going the way I suggested that it might one day go 24 years back when I was writing to the Rural Fire Service Commissioner Coperberg. 3 weeks ago my son went to a group officers conference, the Rural Fire Service in Coffs Harbour. And he asked the question there that I put to Coperberg back in maybe 2005, 2003 perhaps. When we've got a 40-degree day with 15% humidity and 40 or 60 kilometre an hour winds, when we've got a mega firestorm at the end of an intense drought, how are we supposed to resist a bushfire or fight it or deal with it? What are we going to do when there's no diesel for the fire trucks and there's no jet fuel for the Firebirds, the heli-tacs, the fire bombers and the large air tankers? What is the plan? So, yeah. If you haven't seen the undefended area, then this defended area is pretty terrifying. But if you've seen what it compares to, you can see what I've been spending my time on. Not all just talking to the wildlife and feeding them free biscuits. I think my brush cutter's got about 240 hours on it at this point. Yeah, so young fella, my lad, asked the assembled chain of command, what is the plan? how do we fight bushfires with no diesel and no kerosene? And the answer was, is and still remains, I suppose, we will just have to cross that bridge when we come to it. Now, note the operative word was when, not if, when. Super El Nino drought, no rain maybe for a year. I think it might be reasonable to expect that we should have rain by next autumn, but during winter it's probably not going to get wet. The spring, we might go into spring with no soil moisture profile and all the vegetation dead and crisp. And if there's no spring rains and if we've got a hot windy summer, especially if we get dry lightning storms, it's going to be a very interesting bushfire season. Happily, I've got sprinklers, I've got water tanks, I've got water pumps, I've got some fuel for the pumps, and my neighbour's got a solar electric bore pump, and I can transfer water from the bore pump to my system using a little bit of petrol for the pumps. But that's the bright shiny drought. To be honest, I haven't been uploading on my normal spontaneous sporadic schedule because I've been a bit busy preparing to try not to be burnt over. Welcome to the effect of 8.2 billion fuckwits who voted to grow the economy regardless of any forecast environmental damage. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.